When did you first grow curious about the paranormal? Dare you dig deeper? You are listening to House of Asher.
And welcome back to House of Asher. I'm your host, Steve Asher. And like I said, that works out pretty handy that way. This is just a few days after Halloween. Hopefully you guys got to tune in to the special call-in show I did for WPKY 103.3 FM, the home of the Tiger, in your hometown radio station in Princeton, Kentucky. And I will be trying to get that up on YouTube and Spreaker and whatnot. But tonight, we're back to the graveyard, back to the darkness, back to the shadows. And what we're going to be touching on is stuff I like, because I'm kind of selfish like that. And so anyway, what we're doing is, as you guys know, I love B movies, and I love especially people who also love B movies. You find people with kindred spirits, people tend to gravitate toward them, and it's just you have a sense of community. And you know, sometimes it's one of those things you might. What I love is talking to somebody, and then they're like, "Oh, have you seen whatever? You know, this movie?" I'm like, "Oh no, I didn't know. You know, that was out." Or, "Oh, did you ever see the director's cut of this and that?" "Oh no, it's so much better." And you kind of get like your little horror film nerd, you know, fix going on. And this, oh man, this next guy, I feel like, I'm trying to think of the guy from the Gong Show. This next guy coming up. But anyway, this next fella is extremely talented, very versatile person, and I'll just jump right into it. Welcome, everyone, Octavian Hollows. Welcome to the show, Octavia.
Seasonal greetings. It is I, Octavian Hollow, and I'm digging up bones with my pal Steve Asher. Hang in tight, kids. It's the House of Asher. Hey man, what's up?
Hey man, thank you for that. Yeah, I'm gonna have to get you to. I'm gonna have to get you to do a bumper with that. That's awesome.
Not a problem.
You know, it's really odd. I did not really come into doing what I do in regards of this until later in life. I was busy raising kids. I was busy, you know, learning a trade. You know, trying to go to college. You know, for criminal justice, whatnot. And horror was always there, and movies was always sort of a refuge for me. I don't know how it was for you. That when you come to this, you know, how did it happen? You know, everyone has an origin story, so I'm kind of curious how you became you.
Wow. Well, for starters, it doesn't hurt when you're raised in a fairly large family that's really close, because they travel a lot, because being a Navy family, Navy brats, family of 5 kids, and you have a really, really awesome mom that just loves this stuff. And of course, she's gonna, get her kids hooked on it, and that's exactly what happened. And to tell you the truth, I was actually petrified of anything like of this nature, but I was still drawn to it. And of course, the challenge, when you have something that scares you, you need to confront it. So I think that's what started the course in my path on anything that goes bump in the night. I just love it.
Well, you know, it's so funny when you say that. It very much mirrors my own. I think there's this thing like, you know, which I don't know what kind of music you like. As I'd mentioned before, I was really into like punk and metal. But when I was a kid, stuff like Iron Man by Black Sabbath, and there's a song called Steven by Alice Cooper that scared the crap out of me. And it wasn't until years and years, you know, I was that little 70s kid with a bow cut and little corduroy pants. And, you know, I mean, I wasn't feeling that. You know, I mean, I liked Three Stooges and stuff like that. I was kind of like comedy. And I kind of shied away from horror. But it was always kind of there. I mean, I think I saw The Exorcist when it first come out. You know, I didn't see it in the theaters, but I saw it on television really young. Like as soon as it come out, my brother's watching it, and they made me watch it, and which might explain some of my issues. But it was a thing where it was very much like that. You're scared, but you're drawn in. The whole Moth of the Flame thing. What, if you can remember, and I also had a mom that was very much into the type of subjects and true horror and all that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah.
What was there like? What was the first movie that you remember seeing that gave you the jeebies? That but still drew you in.
It's funny. It's kind of a tie. I think the movie that really disturbed me about the paranormal, supernatural, cult was The Exorcist. I mean, I was the same way. My first experience was when it first debuted on TV. Thank God. I can't imagine the full impact of it at that age. But that really unnerved me, and it bothered me. I was constantly watching and seeing things in the shadows, and always petrified if I opened my eyes, I'd see Linda Blair's demonic face there. but in the same sense, it intrigued me, and just that thing with the family, my mom and everybody else. It was the safe. It was weird to say, but it was actually a safe place to be. But as far as horror, I'd say Halloween is what got me into the genre. It turned me on to the whole horror genre thing.
Okay. Well, I know. Again, we're relatively in the same age bracket. The '70s was like the heyday of the television movie, in miniseries stuff. The Salem's Lot stuff and Kolchak and all that. And I'd mentioned, I have a Trilogy of Terror poster on my wall. That little freaking doll. Oh, I still hate it.
Black, yeah.
Oh, yeah. My brother's like, oh yeah, there's a store's got one. I said, yeah, burn it to the ground. I don't want to see it. Nobody go burn a building to the ground. Okay, I'm just talking to my brother about that. But it was just a thing of that really stayed with me. And The Exorcist, yeah, that was big time for me. There's a movie. All right, there were two movies that were television movies that got me, and I want to know what yours are. There was Gargoyles, and if you haven't seen it, God, watch it. You've got to watch Gargoyles, man. 1972. It had I think was it Ben Casey who played the oh goodness, Revenge of the Nerds. Remember the college that the all black college that those guys were trying to get into, and he was the dean, the super cool dean with a real deep voice like this, and it was so freaking jacked me up. And there was behind the door, beyond the door, where there was this mom. It was an Italian film, kind of like Gates of Hell, and it was all subbed, but the kids went in there, and the mom was acting all squirrely, so it was right after The Exorcist, and of course everybody's putting out their own Exorcist, and they were trying to say something to the mom, and she turned her head completely around in the bed, and her eyes were white and looked all jacked up. And I'm like, yeah. Never, man, I had nightmares. I'll still have nightmares about stuff like that. It's so, I don't know what it is. What is it about that clings with us and just stays with us through all those decades?
Oh, I don't know. But nightmares like that, to me, nightmares are real nightmares that really scare you and scare me. Are the kind about life and things and stuff happening to people you care about. But when I have a nightmare about something like this now, it's like getting the extra feature. It's like, yeah.
Right.
But I think it's just embedded in our psyche, and I think it's just maybe it's that, like I said earlier, that need to confront what scares you, so it doesn't control you, so you can kind of have a grip and a tap on it and control it instead.
Yeah,
that's my theory. I'm sticking to it.
Well, no, I mean that's a solid one. I mean, I think that we all need a safe out, a safe purge, a pressure valve. And as I got older, slow. I mean, at least when I was in school, by then I was already sort of the creepy Carrie kid. I was all about scary books, and I was all about horror movies and researching about old spiritualists and all that stuff. I was a real quirky kid, but but it wasn't like, oh hey, I mean, it got to a point later when it was kind of cool to be ghoulish, but when you were first in that time, and it wasn't a cool place to be. But
oh no, if you're a comic book kid, you got beat up or you got harassed. If you're into the horror stuff, you're creepy, weird. I was that kid, so I know totally what you're talking about.
So now, were you more of like a horror comic kid, or were you more like a Marvel DC guy or Independence or what?
Oh no, as far as comic books, I was totally like a Marvel DC guy, more on the Marvel side. Big Spider-Man. In fact, that was my nickname all through like grade school, and then my nickname in high school was Bruce because I started, doing Taekwondo and I was really good at it. So.
That's killer. So you were able to like actually kind of pull off some of the bendy, flippy moves and all that stuff.
Back in maybe years ago, I used to do the flying side kicks. I actually had a 540 degree outer crescent kick. I'd go the whole 360 plus an additional 180. It was crazy.
See, I went toward music. I wasn't that friggin' limber, and I'm just like, yeah, I think I can learn like Halo of Flies, or I think I can learn Electric Funeral and stuff like that. So I kind of went toward the music. I mean, I dug that, and my favorite, like as a Marvel kid, because I grew up well, obviously, I mean, I liked Ghost Rider. I think it was the first comic I ever picked up because it looked really metal. But then I went into like X-Men. But there was always a character called the Zombie. I don't know if you remember this guy. I can't remember if he was DC or Marvel, and he couldn't talk or anything. It was kind of I guess similar to a Swamp Thing, but he was, I guess, a professor. I'm sorry, I'm blanking on it now. And he had this amulet. It was around the times of Doctor Strange and.
It sounds like Damien, son of Satan. Was it that one?
Well, no, it wasn't that. But I mean, I do remember that. He had. It was one of those like gothic tortured things. He had a daughter and he couldn't communicate with her, and whenever he did try to contact her, of course she's like eek, a zombie. Wow. And so he's got that whole forlorn, lonely goth thing, which I ate up. But so like so okay, so obviously you were a Spider-Man guy.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now.
Webhead.
Well, I mean, that's the thing, because like I really liked the Beast. I was actually at one time able to kind of do that run, like what he does with his hands and his, like that, which probably explains why my shoulders are jacked now. But one time I could actually do that. But that was my only claim to fame, I guess. But so how did you make the jump from comics into that? I mean, or is it always just like, was it kind of like one of those Lost Boys? You got your comic books, you've got your horror movies, you've got your your drive-in features, you got your, how did that work out?
I mean, it was still a constant. Each year we had a late-night horror host called Simon from Simon Sanctorum. He was like creepy. He's not like the funny horror host. He was funny, but he was creepy funny. I mean, his segments alone. But no, as far as comics, the transition, wasn't really a transition. It was kind of like a parallel, running abreast of each other. Was also really big into the Warren comics, Uncle Creepy and Cousin Mary and all that. And it was like, to me, it was just dark and twisted. It kind of left me with that uneasy feeling, like after watching the movie like The Exorcist. I get that same feeling after reading like a few stories from one of those comics. Also, speaking of, it wasn't Damien. Marvel had Damien, the son of Satan, but there was a demon hunter in the Warren comics. The guy who had the red suit and wore the helmet, but he was like half demon, half human. Just that stuff just intrigued me. And plus, it was a little more geared towards adults, so it was a little more edgier, so it was like, it didn't play down to the kid level. And I was a guy like that, too.
Well, what I really dug was, you remember like kind of like the pre-code or like there became a time when everyone kind of said, okay, we'll take the seal, that way it's safe, because everybody knows comics turns you into psycho killers and this and that and whatnot.
Oh yeah.
So like PMRC, but for comic codes. But I mean, I really dug like eerie comics, and my older brothers were into like heavy metal, like the Heavy Metal magazine, and I didn't really get my brothers, and they didn't really read like Fate magazine or nothing like that, because they were definitely like kind of metalhead types and stuff. Yeah. So I got more of that element from it. But yeah, it was always there. For me, movies and books and horror comics and movies and music and the visual and the theatrics of it always played together. And that was one thing, honestly, that was one thing I missed in punk. It depended on the punk band, I guess. I mean, you have like the Cramps and some of the bands that were a little bit more horror, goth related, Misfits and stuff. But it was all stripped down. We're taking all that down. You lost some of that. And as much as I loved it, I think I yearned for some of that because I guess I'm sort of like a kind of a undercover goth, I guess. But so did you find like like you said you were a Navy brat? Did you find like that was like your rod, your safe haven, of going? It doesn't matter if I'm in Portland. It doesn't matter if I'm in whatever in Germany somewhere where there's going to be a base. There's going to be a comic shop. There's going to be a maybe not a Blockbusters or something, but something there. You're going to be able to go get your video nasties, get your scary shows and all that.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm not really sure I understood the question. Being a Navy brat. No, it was just a constant source of it, seems, because my family all loved it, and especially like especially this time of year, like into December or whatever. But the weekends, you have your creature double feature, and then you'd have. I was talking about that to my girlfriend earlier. Even when I was like an infant, it was creeped into me because I know my family was addicted to Dark Shadows. So even though I was probably too young when it was being aired to actually remember, it was still instilled into my brain.
Yeah. So. Well, I know my wife and her mother, who's now passed, used to watch like reruns of Dark Shadows and all that. And I mean, like you were talking about having a mother who was very involved with not so much the paranormal, but I mean interest in curious and odd, uncanny things.
Yeah.
You remember like Tales from the Dark Side and
oh yeah, like I was watching it today.
God, like the Unsolved Mysteries theme. That was creepy, man. When that kicked on, it was like, oh, dude. And I used to have it on as a ringtone, and that thing goes off at 2 a.m. or something. It was like, oh man, yeah, I got to change that. But yeah, I think it was, like you said, an excellent primer for where you kind of gravitated toward. Now, when you were younger, were you already kind of honing, kind of getting your bones for the, work more toward kind of horror hosting and getting into that vibe, or how did that come about?
No, actually, what my outlet at the time was, I was actually had created the character I portray on the horror hosting show, Octavian. He came to me in a dream, but it was one of those things where I wasn't like, oh my god, I'm scared. It was like, wow, that is so cool, and it was a connection. It just kind of rolled from there, and I started kind of developing. I was didn't know where to go with it, but I was working on a backstory for that. So in that sense, you could say, yeah, I mean, Octavian's history is kind of deprived from all that stuff that I dreamed up back then. But with life and everything, there's in and outs. But I remember the '80s definitely with the shows like we talked about, Tales from the Dark Side. There's also Tales from the Crypt, the HBO people. But there's shows like Freddy's Nightmares. There was Friday the 13th series. I mean, those things just fueled. It was like weekend fuel. And Bangor magazine. It was just even though it wasn't as popular back then, there's always sources that you could reach out and grab. It was just magical. Now it might be a little overkill because it's so readily available with the internet and the popularity of it. But I still find my spark in the little things that I enjoy.
Right. Well, did you find, and it's hard not to sound like the old Pepperidge Farm guy, but it's just like, there was a magic in when you found this. Now, I remember finding a Fangora magazine on the roadway. I can only assume somebody found it and said, well, we're getting rid of this, and they just flung it out a window, some peed off mom.
Get the hell out of them.
Right. Which I was a young kid, right? So I'm seeing this.
Mom, you're making it go away.
Right. So I'm riding my bike. This is the '80s. You go everywhere. Probably '70s, '80s. So I'm pedaling along my bike. Kind of Stranger Things-esque type vibe. And I saw some stack of books. So of course I'm a little kid, or a young boy. I'm thinking, Nudie Magazine Day. Jackpot, right? Woohoo! So I'm like, let's go see what this is. And I was like, oh, this is crazy. And I think it had Kurt Barlow from Salem's Lot or something on it, and then it had like a trifold, like you open it up and it had was it maybe The Howling or something? And I was like, this is chewed up. This is great.
Or Prophecy, something from Paul Mann.
Oh yeah. Well, it was obviously you were kind of more gravitated toward the slasher line of it and stuff, which because you said like Halloween was your trip, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
but and you mentioned, yeah, that is the slasher that opened up the floodgates, flooded with blood of slasher movies after that. But you know, early on, I mean, dissecting that movie, I mean, John Carpenter is a director. I mean, he's not be the most brilliant director, but he knew what the hell he was doing, and at such a young age as a director. But yeah, I mean, there wasn't really a lot of gore, if you know, as you know, in Halloween, because as a director, he was like, yeah, I can show you the knife going in, but it might be even more scary of what your imagination tells you, what's happening when he stabs somebody. So it wasn't really that gory. It was the suspense and just the whole psychological thing that really intrigued me more, I think, than the actual gore and the violence of it.
There was
guys. I do love the horror.
Well, there was a movie we were kind of earlier talking off air, and I'd mentioned William Castle. There was a movie back in the day, and I know I'm really pulling it out of the mothballs. There was a movie called Straight Jacket that had Joan Crawford in it, and which Castle and like Alfred Hitchcock kind of had this back and forth, and around the same time Psycho come out, Straight Jacket was out, and that was one of the movies, because I'm talking about Carpenter. The thing was, Carpenter kind of dug both of those guys and tried, like you said, use that building and that atmospheric thing to where it wasn't just, like you said, just a bloodbath, because it kind of got to a point, you just go so far. That's when they had movies for, it's graduation day, it's this and that day, it's, it's Arbor Day, it's Canadian Boxing Day murders or something. And it became, how many more?
They make you afraid to look at your calendar every month.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, leave it alone. But it got to that point where it's like, how many more freaking holidays can they make a scary movie out of? And it was
your birthday. No,
exactly.
Not again. It's gonna kill me.
Right. So, but I think it's almost like it just it oversaturated, and I think it took some of that quaintness and that, I don't know. There's a certain thing once things reach critical mass, and I don't know. I knew a lot of kids, well, just like punk music, kids like or metal bands or something. And they really like a band, and then finally they maybe possibly get commercial success. Then everybody likes them, and the guy down the street that was the jock that used to bump on you and call you all kinds of names. Now he's bumping it and with his T-tops out. And you're going, man, and you feel kind of like lost and betrayed by it. And it seems like sometimes it becomes, well, now everybody likes it, and it sort of like it loses some of its initial coolness, which I hate that, but that's sort of the nature of things. If things are really good, it's going to become popular. That's just, things ebb and wane. But now, I mean, what do you think about like the CGI of then as opposed to, or not CGI of then, the actual, hands-on prosthetic works and stuff like that, and all the different gas that they did, and as opposed to like a lot of the CGI now?
Oh, that's a great question. And this could apply both to the way they apply it in horror films as well as they have like specifically in Star Wars. I mean, Star Wars, I prefer the first three originals of the 70s and the 80s films because of the clever technique and workarounds in order to get done what they want you to do to show their, tell their story. CGI, it's brilliance and technology and all that stuff, but it's overkill. It's everywhere. If it could be used sparingly, I'd probably enjoy it more. But in the sense of horror, I mean, just look at Child's Play. I mean, using animatronics as opposed to just having a CGI Chucky running around talking and everything like he's Shrek. I definitely prefer the skill, the hands-on skill, as opposed to the digital. But not ruling out that the digital has huge potential for certain effects. It's just knowing when to use and when not to use it.
Right. I mean, for me. It's like, okay, you have it. It's just like, okay, it's like, okay, like lens flares. Okay, like in Star Trek, this new Star Trek movies.
Yeah.
Then it was in every movie, and then like constantly through it, and it's like, okay, and it takes away its effectiveness, and because you're like, yeah, okay, great, another flare. Well, like you were talking about Child's Play, there was so much of that I know the directors had like a lot of lines and supports for the animatronics coming at you, and they would like actually like build a fake wall for the actions where they're coming down through an area, and they have all the lines in behind them. You can't see it all because all you see is just this moving thing, and it looks like it's running at you. That's real masterwork, like the old, well, even like the stop motion stuff, but like Clash of the Titans. I'm blanking on the guy's name. Hausen. Oh, people are gonna hate me for this.
Yeah, Ray Harryhausen.
Yeah, it's Hausen. Yes, and
yeah,
you. For me, even the old Rankin and Bass stuff. To jump off into like Christmas stuff, all the Rudolph stuff, and then all that. Did you ever see stuff like Mad Monster Party and all that growing up? I don't know. You may not.
Oh yeah, I own it. Yeah.
So for me, that was super killer. And like you said, I think there's a time and place for CGI, but I think if you take something that's just so saturated with it, like, okay, let's take example, American Werewolf in London. One of the greatest uses of animatronics in real life to form a very smooth, convincing looking transformation. And then you take something like, and I like both these movies, say something like some of the Underworld stuff, which is almost entirely CGI'd out, werewolves.
Yeah.
It's just, it shows. I mean, you can tell. I mean, your mind knows. When you have it where it's half and half real and half animatronic, you can trick yourself. It's a sleight of hand. But once you have it purely, computer rendered, I think it loses its thrill, at least for me.
Oh, I agree with you totally.
Right.
I mean, I'd rather see a cheesy where effects where I can actually still see the strings on a puppet, but knowing that the craft is there, than just some CGI thing that you see everywhere. It's everywhere. It's, like I said, it's great, it's fantastic, but it takes takes a lot of imagination out of it, because like you can do anything now.
Right,
and that was what was.
No, I mean exactly, and I mean for me, like going back, to like it says some of the William Castle stuff, like the Tingler and all that, and
Oh yeah, even like in the House on Haunted Hill. I mean, the scariest part of that movie was like when that woman turns around and that old lady on the dolly.
Yeah.
But that was scary as hell. That was fantastic. I loved it.
That's one of the scenes that scares my wife. She was
me.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm trying to say. You take something like especially when they do adaptations like William Blatty's The Exorcist, but they stay very true to it, because they could have really oversold it and got super cheesy, but they kept that atmosphere there. And for me, a lot of time, like you said, what you don't see, and it lets it cook in your head, and the monsters in your head, at least for me, are so much darker than anything. Maybe Exorcist is close, but that's for me when I create like characters and when I write books, because sometimes stuff comes to me in my sleep. I don't mean it like I'm channeling something, but like, well, good God, Mary Shelley, Frankenstein, was a nightmare. Do you ever have anything similar like that? Because we talked about touching on the paranormal as well. Do you ever have like almost like you feel like a divine intervention on, be it some of your stuff for the the Monster Channel or for your music or whatnot?
Oh well, like I said, the whole Octavian Hollow thing for my show Haven Falls Horror Fix, which can be seen on Monster Channel and the Erie Late Night Horror Channel on www.erielatenightcom. Cheap plug, sorry, but
no, plug away. I want you to do it a couple times during the show, because I think it's important for people to hear this.
But that set the foundation. I mean, from that point on, and I think I was 14. I joke around because one of my buddies, another horror host, a fantastic horror host out of Indiana. You got to check him out. Slash Cooper from Graveyard Tales is my favorite. But I joke around and I tell him that my character is older than he is. So,
well, I mean, that's the thing, is that people, I don't know, I think people have pulled away from the cathartic element of horror and from it's so formulated to a point. And that's not to say that there's not really great stuff that's come out. I'd seen something on, was it wasn't House on Haunted Hill? I got that stuck in my head. Haunting of Hill House. I don't know if you've happened to seen that.
The Roddy McDowell.
Well, there was Haunting of Hell House, and there was Haunting of Hill House. There's a new like Netflix series that has the kid from E.T. in it. Elliot.
Not Drew Barrymore.
Not Drew Barrymore. No. It's the boy. The boy.
Elliot.
Yeah, that kid.
Oh, Elliot. I can't remember his acting name.
I know. I feel like a jerk, man. But he actually played it very well, and it was very atmospheric and it was very creepy. I mean, there was some gore in it, but you know what I'm saying? It wasn't like some of the stuff.
Yeah.
But it's got that haunting element. So there are new movies that are coming out that's got, you know, it's almost like what used to be cliche and what used to be old hat is slowly coming back around because people ran so far from it. You know. Go ahead.
I think it's because people maybe they're finally getting the realizing. I mean, great. Because we're talking about remakes, and we talked about that I think before the going live, but like the remake of it. I mean, I think finally at that point people realized, hey, it's okay to love both. It's okay to accept a remake, a re-envisioning of it, because the original one is still there. Same thing with the horror hosting. I mean, I butcher movies. I do all kind of effects and everything. I turn horror into humor, and but some people are like, oh, you're butchering. It's a piece of art. It's like, no, it's public domain, and the other thing, I'm not destroying it. It's still there. You can watch it at any time. I did not physically harm the actual physical movie. But sadly, a couple of years ago, Ghostbusters, when that came out, let me ask you, did you see the 2016? Did you enjoy that?
Okay. This is a hot, yeah. I'm preparing myself because I will preface this by saying,
all right.
So it doesn't sound I'm one way or the other. I saw the Poltergeist remake. I liked it. It was different. To me, it was almost like a parallel universe view of it, where certain characters weren't there, certain characters were kind of combined, and the storyline was slightly different. I liked that a lot. The Amityville Horror one, before I wasn't that, I like Ryan Reynolds, but stop. I wasn't that into it. The Ash versus oh gosh, good lord, Evil Dead remake. So I'm kind of hot and cold. I think they would have done better if they treated it as, okay, this is like the next generation, or kind of like the X-Force of Ghostbusters. This is maybe some of their daughters or contemporaries, as opposed to. I think they kind of pooped on the legacy, and I think. I mean, now I have a kid that really liked it, and then I also have one kid who is such a staunch, at least what they feel is original, because they really like the 13 Ghosts that had the guy that played Scooby-Doo and all that. And when I'm like, which I'm like, I said, that's a remake. Here's the original. I was like, well, I like this one better. I said, right, because this is your generation's version of this, so. But,
I agree with them on that one. I do like that one better.
Okay, but to answer your question, seen it in theaters. I didn't buy the DVD. I
was in it. Me and my girlfriend.
Well, okay. Like I said,
that doesn't affect them. I mean, I enjoy it. I would have enjoyed it either way.
No, I would. I totally would have. I would have loved to have been in it myself. But I mean, as of just, I think the way the story arc was, I just think it would have been. I think people would have grasped to it better. I know a lot of people who absolutely love the new It, but then I know some people is like, this is garbage, and I'm like, look, first you have to be open,
It didn't take away. It didn't hurt the original. The original is still there. It's still just as fantastic. It's still my personal favorite. The 1984. Actually, I consider 84 and the 89 just the same movie to me. I mean, it's like a 3-hour, 4-hour movie.
Right.
But the remakes and all that stuff, some people get so upset and frustrated. Oh, how could you do this? I'm like, what? What did I do? I didn't do nothing. It's still there.
Right.
It didn't disappear. It's not a ghost.
Well, I mean, just like the Halloween, and things like that, because they've been talking about wanting to do, well, I mean, obviously they did Nightmare on Elm Street, that kind of come back with certain, it's like if it's not Robert Englund, it's not.
I enjoyed the Nightmare on Elm Street. I didn't enjoy the Friday 13th as much.
Yeah. Well, what's your feelings on this? Okay, Beetlejuice. Not exactly. I'm just saying, not exactly pure horror, but
yeah.
Okay. What do you know about they've been talking about a remake, or not a remake, sorry, a part 2 of this for a while. Are you familiar with this?
Yeah. With Keaton and Winona Ryder. Yeah.
Right. Did you know the story arc on this?
The what?
The story arc on this.
Oh, well, I know originally the original sequel, and I was like, what? It was like Beetlejuice in Hawaii. I'm like, no, please don't do that.
No, exactly. And I think it was kind of a, like, what could be less Tim Burton, but more as Tim Burton, to do the opposite of what would a Tim Burton movie would be, to kind of make it. And supposedly it was going to end with okay, remember like the cartoon where he was sort of kind of a cool guy, kind of like a nice guy, kind of a hero?
I love the cartoon. Yeah, I love the series. I love it.
Right. Well, I love it too. But they were talking about making it more like that, and there was going to be this epic surf battle where kind of like, remember like the Batman and Joker thing back in the day? Yeah,
I'm visualizing that. It's predictable.
Right. So so they're going to kind of do that, but then I'm like, like I said, I try not to shoot anything down before I see it. But it was one of those things, and I've generally, as I've gotten older, I've learned to be a little bit more diplomatic, because I was very much like, hey man, what do you think about whatever, man, Nickelback, garbage, right out the window, bam, before they even get nickel, garbage, or what do you think about this, garbage. But if you don't open yourself up to try new stuff, sometimes you miss on something that's cool. And there's elements of a lot of those movies that I thought were great, but it just takes all kinds. Is there like something remake wise that you would really like to see happen?
Oh yeah. Oh geez. You know what? This is crazy, and it's not really like a horror movie, but it's like a horror. It's part of the horror genre, and it's a big part of what I grew up with. That instilled the concept art thing, and my girlfriend always reminds me of it. The Munsters, but with the stipulation, I would love to see Brad Garrett play Herman. Brad Garrett from Everybody Loves Raymond, Ray's brother. I think he would be a fantastic Herman Munster. You wouldn't have to wear stilts.
See, I was thinking, I don't know why I was thinking about this. Maybe it's because I've got a Silver Bullet poster too. What about Gary Busey as Herman? Like a complete office rocker. Oh my God.
Gary Busey, maybe his grandpa though.
Maybe. And don't even give him a script. Just let him row.
Oh man, the poor guy.
God, I love that. It's just total bedlam.
You know what? Yeah, another horror host, a well-known horror host, told me a really interesting story about Gary Busey. I'll try to make it quick, if that's all right.
Yeah, lay it on me.
But they had the horror hosts. They used to have these big. They still do, but they're kind of, I don't know what they are now. But you see a really big gathering, and they'd all get together, and it'd be like a Hall of Fame and all that stuff. And you just have this huge collection of horror hosts. And one really popular horror host named Roxy Tyler, she had this idea to do a video, and another horror host out of Seattle, Chuck the Clown, he was in on it with her, and they were doing this spoof on a Laurel and Hardy skit, where all these people just kept coming into the room, and all of a sudden, this room would be full of like 50 horror hosts. And he was saying there was so much noise that Gary Busey was staying there at the same time, and he came running down the hall with that real peeled look on his face, like he's going to give somebody a piece of his mind. And he looked and saw like all these 50 horror hosts just falling literally out of this hotel room, and he just looked, stopped, turned around, and went back to his room.
I wonder if he thought like maybe that's normal to him. Maybe he sees that every day in his head.
But they already had it.
He would make an excellent horror host, man. Just let him go.
Oh yeah.
There were some guys.
He wouldn't have to go in makeup. He wouldn't have to do time in the chair. He's scary enough. Just Ah.
No, man. I had there was a documentary, American Scary, and
Yes, fantastic. I love that. I know it
oh,
was fantastic.
dude, it's one of those things like you always hear about like concerts where it's like, okay, everybody was at this I don't know, Deep Purple concert. Everybody was at this Mothers of Invention concert, and
Yeah.
everybody in the audience formed bands, and everybody wanted to go do that. Like I watch stuff like that, and I'm like going, yeah, I've got to do this, you know.
Yeah.
And it amps you up because, like you said, it brings back that wonderment, you know, that you
Yeah.
had as a little kid.
That Monster Kid spark that just burns in all of us and stays burning. And that's why we're in our 40s and our 50s and our 60s and we're still doing this crap because we love it. It's just part of our soul, you know.
Right.
And maybe it'll prepare us for what's on the other side, you know, depending on how we, you know, roll the dice while we're here.
Man, that's that's I try to explain to my girls because again, like I said, if you walk into like my little office, it's like a little horror shop. You know, it's got all the weird kooky stuff. I'm still trying to find like a hog's heart that I can put in preserve in a jar and put like a little red food coloring, make it look creepy, and where the light shines. How cool would that be, right? But
Yeah.
but it's one of those things too. Just like, I've got grandkids now, and kids will be running in, and I'm gonna scar these kids
Yeah.
up. I don't want to do that. But is there obviously we talked about the things of remakes and stuff like that, but was there something paranormal that necessarily, like, say, drew you toward a certain movie? Like, did you ever have any paranormal experiences
Oh, oof.
that you want to talk about?
I was with both me and Mystica, Mary, my girlfriend. She's also part of my horror host show. But we belong to a local paranormal investigation group, and we did a lot of investigation. The headquarters was right in town where we're at, and it was like a Brian Hanois from Taps, from Ghost Hunters. He had come. They invited him and who's the little guy with a camera? I can't remember his name.
Oh,
Slipping
man,
my mind.
I'm blanking. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
talking about the
the
kid?
guy with the beard and hat. But anyway, they
You talking
came
about
down and they
Steve?
said it was like, excuse me?
You talking about Steve?
Yeah, Steve Hanois. Oh, no,
Yeah.
no, Brian Hanois. Brian Hanois.
Yeah.
He was the goofball from the first couple of seasons of Ghost Hunters.
Yeah, I miss Brian. I miss Brian, man. I hated when
Yeah.
he left. He was probably my favorite guy off of that. Not anything
He was
against.
the goof. He was funny.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
you got to have that spark.
But he came down, and they said it was like this place, which was the headquarters, which was actually it was a building, like it used to be like a factory building in town, but like maybe 5 or 6 stories. But they said it was like a Disney World of the paranormal. Like there was demon activity on one level, and just residual energy on another, and
Jeez.
yeah, and but going on investigations, had meetings telling me that there were demons right in front of me and stuff like that, because I used to do a lot of camera work when I was with them, and I didn't feel it. I just wasn't getting it, and like I just take her word for it, I guess. But there was that. But personally, the one thing that I know, I remember a few years ago, I was driving home late one night, not too late, but in my rearview mirror, I saw somebody, and it was like a shadow figure, but it was very clear. It's very solid. I was coherent. I was very coherent. I'm not a drunken driver guy or anything like that. I'm always coherent. I was married with 2 stepkids at the time, so I was responsible. But this shadow figure was clear as day in the back seat in my rearview mirror, and I was like, oh my goodness. But I couldn't really pick out the features, but I just knew it was my brother who had passed like in '84. He was like 32 when he passed, but I just knew it was him. It was just the weirdest thing. To me, that's my most strongest paranormal experience, other than some BVP results in a photograph that I used to own that I took at a village cemetery of a very angry demonic face and a swirl of clouds looking right at me. I think my former stepdaughter might have thrown the picture away because it really frightened her.
Wow. Well, now you said you felt it was your brother.
Yeah.
Was there something that you think triggered that? Had you been thinking of your brother? Was there maybe a song on the radio that made you, you know.
Well, that was the thing. I mean, it was at a time when I didn't have any tragedies going on. In fact, I was at the time. I was, like I said, I was married at the time. I had 2 kids, and a nice little house in town, a nice little suburban town with a German Shepherd, and everything was great. I was very active in my church at the time when I belonged to a church, and in fact, I think I was coming back from doing some stuff for them, and really, maybe he was just there to acknowledge that, hey, just checking in. You're at a peaceful moment. I know you're good. Cool. That's the vibe I got from it. It wasn't like oh, I'm here to send you a message or there's danger. It was like, and there was nothing that happened shortly after that was tragic, that, like anybody passing or a tragedy. So I think it was just a check-in, to tell you the truth, and maybe he was able to drum up enough energy to actually make himself visible to me.
Man, that's trippy. I mean, I know that for me, having seen a few oddball things, and that's, again, I don't see stuff around every corner and whatnot. I've had a handful of paranormal experiences directly and stuff, but I think people put too much stock in, like, oh, well, I think I see my brother and my grandmother. Oh, they're trying to tell me something. Maybe they just come, like you said, come to check on you. Maybe how often has you had a nephew or somebody come over and they just want to hang out. They just want to see how you are. They want to crash on the couch or something. Whatever. Why would they necessarily be different in their lives, or in their current incarnation, whatever that may be. Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably a lot closer to it. Yeah, that's weird, man. I mean, did you ever have any other connections, visitations like that after that, or is it that kind of one and done?
With him, I try very hard to, and I always fall out of it because late at night or whatever, people get tired and lazy. But I always try to keep a dream journal or a log. If I have a lucid dream, if I wake up from it, I try to record it, write it down, because it's gone if you don't do that. But I know I've visited with him in my dreams, and it was like those lucid dreams where it's actually realer than real. I mean, I don't know if there's any real value to that, or if it's just the brain pull up memories, and when you're in that state of sleep that it's just so intense that it feels that real. But I firmly, in my heart, believe that it was actual contact. And again, just another one of those visits. And one other dream I had that was like that, and when I woke up, I was very disturbed, and I didn't even have to write it down. That's how intense it was, and I remembered it. But I had a coworker, and I left the job, so I kind of lost touch. But he reached out to me and gave me a call, and because he was sick, he had cancer, and touch base and stuff like that was great. Touch base is what. But I had this dream where I was in the hospital where we both worked at the time, and he was older than me, and he was a Vietnam vet and all that. But I'd seen him, and he was like wearing this like almost like a Johnny, but it was like almost sheer, and it was like embarrassing. I could actually see his behind. I'm like, dude, really, you got to do something about that. But he showed up, and he was like, I got to show you something. You got to follow me. And we were running down these back stairs that nobody ever traveled down in the hospital. It was so weird, and I'm like trying to keep up, and his name was Pete, and I'm like, Pete, you got to tell me what's going on. He's like, I got to show you something. And then when he got to the door, as soon as he opened the door, and I'm like right behind him, he just like in the air, just gone. And I was like, what the hell is this? And to me, that, but there was no follow-up to that. I never had another experience or a dream, or at least nothing that I could remember. To me, those are the things that stand out as far as, there's been many, many things, but nothing that I'm with the paranormal. And my big thing was when I was with the paranormal group, I was the debunker. And because my theory is like, look, I believe this stuff, but I don't believe that all these things are legitimate, contacts or proofs or whatever. And if it is, I need to rule out every possibility before I accept, because I really want it to be, but I'm not going to jump right into it, especially if I can rule it out by, either dust or lighting or, or EMF, problems or anything like that.
Radio bleed overs, all that. Well, see, because I was waiting for you to go, and I got a call the next morning at that time that he passed or something. But
no,
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would tell you that if that was the case, but it was like there was nothing. It was just like okay, thanks for stopping by.
Yeah. You know, honest to God, I think a lot of what we experience, because we're humans and we're kind of self-involved, we
Yeah,
think, oh, it's got to mean blah, blah, blah. Or if you
yeah,
see something necessarily, and not necessarily that it's not, but a lot of times it's like, oh, well, they come to me to warn me. They come to me to what, or maybe this thing was going to be coming through that area anyway. Maybe
yeah,
whatever paranormal phenomenon you touched on, or maybe you just witnessed it. It's like you're sitting here at watching an interstate. You have no connections with those vehicles other than you're witnessing them. You know,
yeah,
it's that connected. But but when it's something paranormal, automatically it's like, oh, this has to mean. It doesn't have to mean anything. And because
mm,
for myself, I don't. When I write about stuff, I'm like, look, I'm not saying it's this. I'm not saying it's that because I don't know. And
yeah,
if you're honest, you have to go and say that. And because a lot of times, like you said, there's, what's the old Arkham's razor thing? A lot of times there is a more plausible thing, and
yeah.
generally it is.
Oh yeah, 90. I'll say at least 98% of the time. And as far as physical experiences within the past maybe 5 or 6 years, this was before I got involved with the paranormal group or whatever. But my sister, with her family, her 4 kids, they were living in the town that we grew up in, different house. But like my niece was supposedly having like night terrors and things like that, and there was something like a psychic vampire and I was like, yeah, whatever. But they actually called in a paranormal group, and I get them through the ringer. But but they did capture some really like unarguable, and I even told them, so wow, that's fantastic, like an orb, but like not just like it wasn't just a piece of dust. It was like it had dimension, it had depth of field, it traveled down the hallway and like actually made a corner. I was like, you got to be kidding me. That's not a piece of dust, because it'd have to be the size of a basketball. But the experiences I had there were actually physical. I mean, I've had, supposedly there was a child that liked to run around and play, and my sister claimed that she could feel the child like sitting next to her, because that many kids in an apartment at the time, single mother, and she was sleeping on the couch, and she'd be sitting there, and she could feel somebody sitting next to her, and she got to the point where she just almost treated this presence as one of her kids. And I wasn't so sure how she'd. I don't know if that's such a good idea. You're welcoming and inviting things. You're not sure if that's exactly what you think it is.
Right.
But me having my sleeve tugged and hearing a voice that I swore was somebody, and I heard a voice. I was going into the refrigerator, and I thought I heard my sister say, "Yeah, I'll take one of those." And then I grabbed a beer and I handed it to her, and she's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "You asked me for this." And she's like, "No, I didn't." I said, "I just heard you plain as day."
Yeah.
And my niece, who was having these nightmares, she was saying that she was sensitive to these things, and she could see these things. So she said, being a skeptic, and even though I'm her uncle, I'm still very skeptical, and I still need proof. But she was saying, "Oh yeah, that's the little girl that and then somebody else said that. I didn't want to say anything because I didn't think you would have heard it. But you did hear it. I don't know. It was weird, but that's it."
No, I mean, and that's the thing. I mean, that's probably the most honest in regards of retelling stuff like that, because
Yeah,
again, you're not putting any, little addendums to this. You're not going, well, this happened because back in 1984 there was a whatnot over here, or or you're trying to make reason of something that doesn't necessarily make sense. And the way you're bringing that's very, very, very honest and kind of telling of how you are about it. I would love to have had an investigation, because sometimes you have people that, what's the old saying, like a light flickers is like, 1% chance electrical trouble, 99% chance
yeah,
of demon or something. There's a lot of that, and there's that mania, kind of that Salem-esque type stuff. You get caught up in it, and then everyone's starting to see stuff, and you're like, no, y'all gotta reel it in, guys.
Oh, it's too easy. I mean, you take a photograph of a fire pit, an outside or a fireplace, and you're going to see face, because as being with your history in paranormal investigation, the human mind is hot wired to do that.
Recognize that. Yeah, matrixing. I mean, that's one of the primal things that we have out, in nature. That's why when people who are used to hunting can, find these little tells and whatever, or they can spot something. You see it, you see that deer out there? No, man, look bear past the blind. I'm like, I see trees.
Yeah.
Once you, especially when you are in that mindset, just like with EVPs, you can show something to somebody who's not very much used to them, and maybe they hear nothing. And then sometimes that's true though, but maybe then you have to step back and go, well, am I hearing it because I'm thinking I should hear something? You have to.
That's why I stepped back from it.
Yeah, that's hard. I mean, for a lot of people, especially if they get bigger in the game, they're expected to provide, expected to find ghosts, and sometimes you're just not.
But there's also that situation where, like you mentioned, EVPs and things like that. When we were with the ghost hunting group, they had a client prior to us joining, but she started doing her own EVPs, and she became obsessed, and she had like hours and hours and hours, and it consumed her, and her EVPs were becoming more and more. Apparently, I personally didn't get to hear any of them, but it's like, do you know who you're talking to here? Yeah. You have to, like I mentioned in the beginning of our conversation, I said, should we have done a St. Michael's prayer because of the technology? Felt like it was being possessed by a poltergeist.
Right. No, I mean, be careful what you wish for, and be mindful. I mean, even though I'm agnostic, I always try to do a little preparatory thing, and just don't, come on, man. We grew up through the the 70s and 80s. You don't just go blindly into this, and if you believe it, you don't. I forgot who it was that said this. Even if you aren't particularly religious, it's like, I don't believe in the devil, or what is it? It's okay, he believes in you. And I'm not saying there's even a devil out there, but there's definitely dark stuff out there. But let me ask you, in the last couple of minutes we got, why don't you give your web address again, and where people can get a hold of you, and where they can find your show, and any appearances, whatnot that you got going on?
Well, I've actually I chose to be exclusive to the Monster Channel and the Erie Late Night Horror Channel, which is the same setup. It's the Erie Late Night Horror Channel presents the Monster Channel, which Monster Channel you can find online. It's a 24-hour streaming service. The guy that runs it, Halloween Jack, he's like, to me, he's like the top guy in the genre, of the horror host genre. And his sidekick, Bone Jangler, he's like the bad boy of the horror genre. Very charismatic. But that you can catch online anytime, but the schedule changes like every week, and it starts like on a Friday. And that's at www, we already know that part, EerieLateNight.com. And we also have a Roku channel, which is the Erie Late Night Horror Channel. And the instructions on how to get that onto your Roku, if you have a Roku set up, it's right on the webpage that I mentioned earlier. And I do stuff. I've been kind of out of the loop just a little bit because personal things I've been tending to deal with. But I'm getting back into the editing and doing stuff for the show again. But there's fantastic hosts there 24/7. There's always something enjoyable to watch. And you can usually catch me there. Or you can catch me on Facebook. Just look up Octavian Hollow. And you mentioned the SoundCloud. I'm not going to push that one because I'm still very modest and insecure. And a lot of those recordings are very, very old and done very primitively, just so you know.
I couldn't tell. Super talented guy. And, I want to hear more from you on that, for sure. But
I've been going through stuff all day today.
Well, Octavian, like I said, I appreciate having you on.
Thank you.
And I'm running my little outro music, and I want to tell everybody again, please check out his site and check out everything this guy does. He brings it. He's a very honest and earnest guy. And a little shameless plug, don't forget to check out StevieAsher.com and check me out on Conflict Radio on YouTube. And got different signings coming up. I've still got my books coming through Permuted Press. I want to always say thanks to my sponsors. Posh Embroidery puts out my shirts. I always want to say thanks to the Dunk's Tires and Ollie's Oddities in Paducah, Kentucky. He brings the strange and the weird. But I want you guys to have a great day and stay scared, everybody. Goodbye.